بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. كيف حالكم؟ Alhamdulillah. Beloved brothers and sisters, Alhamdulillah, we come to the final section of Kitab al-Talaq and also our final fiqh lesson for this year, inshallah. I was doing a tally. I see that we've covered about 40 lessons for the year. Subhanallah. May Allah accept and may Allah permit us to recall all the fiqh that has been taught and learnt. Ameen. This evening, as we close Kitab al-Talaq, we are looking at one section. And in fact, this is really a very important section in Kitab al-Talaq, and this issue relates to the point of the custody of children, or in Fiqh al-Hadana, the concept of when parents get divorced, they split, and now there are children, where should those children go? And this is a significant challenge that we have, not only in our community, but I think in any community. And then what complicates the situation for South African Muslims is we have two sets of laws now. You have what the Sharia recommends, and then you have what the common law indicates regarding custody of children. And the two do not reconcile. They are not the same. So what we are going to cover this evening very briefly is what are some of the Islamic teachings relating to the point of custody. And this is a very important aspect. I feel it is one that must be corrected in our communities. If you know of people who are going through this, then give them the appropriate nasiha. Let them not be immersed in emotion, but do what Allah wants them to do in that situation. I will start off, before I go into the fiqh, by just mentioning a point, because this is a huge challenge. When a couple gets divorced, the nasiha, very sincere nasiha that I can give you, is take your matter to an Islamic council, an imam, an Islamic authority that can guide the party through that period, so that they can enter into their parenting agreement under the supervision of an alim. So what is happening in our society is when parties part, when they get divorced, then they rush to lawyers. And then the lawyers contact me for input, when in reality, it can be avoided. And I also start off by mentioning, as I mentioned in last week's fiqh lesson, that even if a divorce occurs, the father will continue to provide for the children. He continues to provide for them. There is that misnomer of if you divorce the lady, you divorce the children. That is a fallacy. So let's look at what the Shaykh writes. So the Shaykh says, وَإِذَا فَارَقَ الرَّجُلُ زَوْجَتَهُ, if a man separates from his wife and they have an infant, right? There is an infant, so we refer to an infant being one that is very young, generally younger than 3. The lady, she has the most right to the infant's custody until that infant reaches 7 years old, right? The child then chooses between his or her parents and then moves to the parents that the child chooses. What I need to highlight is that the laws of custody in fiqh are not clear-cut. There isn't a specific rule that will always be applied. There are always recommendations. So please don't go around in our community saying, no, how old is that child? That child must go to that parent. Don't do that. Because when the issue of hadana comes about in fiqh, it is always evaluated by the hakim, by the alim, the imam. Looks at the case, evaluates the parents, and then determines what laws of fiqh will apply. But then the Shaykh also gives us, importantly, the qualities of the custodian. the qualities in order to take custody of children. What are sort of essential and cannot be negotiated. The person must be of sound mind, right? They must be free, which everyone falls into that category. They must be Muslim. So very important point. If something happens and children need to go somewhere, from an Islamic perspective, we will always prioritize the Islamic home, the Islamic upbringing, right? The courts might rule something else, but from an Islamic perspective, the person must be Muslim. They must have their chastity. In other words, not on the scene and involved in appropriate actions. They must be trustworthy. They should also not be a traveler. And then a very important point, that if it is a lady, if it's the mother, then she must still be single. Because in fiqh, if a lady gets divorced, there's a young child, generally the child goes to the mother. That's how we begin in the fatwa. Parents split, there's a baby younger than 7 or a child younger than 7. We start off, the mother is entitled to this child. Now we check, is the mother living an appropriate life? Maybe she's going out, she's clubbing. So the husband can then take it back to the Islamic authority and say, no, she's not living an appropriate life. There aren't Islamic morals there. And then the man must present that evidence. Here's a picture of her in the club. Or here she's out drinking. Then the father can raise to the authority, no, this lady is not providing an appropriate upbringing. Then it can go back to the man. Or if the lady remarries. So in fiqh, this is a clear rule. If the lady remarries, she generally loses the right to the child. Why, you might ask? Why? Because she gets married to a man, new husband, that now has rights upon her. He has a right to her time, to other services and so forth, and therefore the lady generally loses the right. But again, it's not clear cut. So if there's a young baby, and this is what we do here in the ulama in the city, we evaluate every case and we call the parents in and we'd say, okay, would you like the infant? So sometimes the man says, I want the child with me, right? And maybe it's a 2-year-old. We then evaluate, is this child being breastfed? Are they still weaning? Is the child... So if there's no reason to take the child away from the mother, then the child shouldn't be taken away from the mother. And so therefore we must evaluate it. Let me share a few additional points that are often considered. Let me take some of the other madhahib as well. So we generally say, as a rule in fiqh, that children younger than the age of tamyiz. Now what is tamyiz? No. Tamyiz, to be mumayyiz. You're doing the right action, Afisa. What's the... Yes. Yeah. There's the definition in fiqh, aksantum. To be able to differentiate between right and wrong. That is tamyiz. It's not the same as taklif, being mukallaf. So the ruling that we have is if the child is not yet mumayyiz, they can't differentiate between right and wrong, they should preferably go to the mother. But if the child, so in the Shafi madhab, it's written 7 years old. But broadly in fiqh we say, if the child can differentiate between right and wrong, we should maybe consult them. Now children who have tamyiz and older, what do the madhab stipulate? In the Hanafi madhab, the mother has more right over the girl and the father has more right over the boy. For children who are now older, they have tamyiz, so maybe 6, 7 and above. It can even be 5 if the child is able to differentiate between right and wrong. So in the Hanafi madhab, that is the encouragement. The mother would have more right over the girl, provided that she's still single, and the father has more right over the boy. In the Shafi'i school of thought, the children should be given the choice irrespective of their gender. That they should be called in by the imam, the Islamic authority, and the imam must ask them, who would you like to stay with and why? And then the child must, in the imam must evaluate. And in my view, using the Islamic authority is a better one. Because if the Islamic authority talks to the child and the child says, I want to stay by my mother because I can play PS5 all of Saturday night. Because the child will evaluate benefits, right? And where they're going to get the most freedom. And so if the Islamic authority listens and says, okay, when you're with your father, does he take you to the masjid? Is he taking you to madrasa, to maktab? Then the Islamic aspects are evaluated. So currently, as we have it, we recognize that these are the general rules of custody in Islam. And the underlying principle is that the parent to provide the best Islamic upbringing is the one that we always try and, preference. That the parent that can provide the best Islamic upbringing. And so a challenge we have in our society, my dear brothers and sisters, as I close on this, is during a divorce, there's often conflict. The parties are fighting. The parents are, not talking to each other. They were in-laws and now they are no longer. And there's huge conflict. And so what I discourage, because this happens, is the parents or the couple that gets divorced. They do need, in South Africa, you need a parenting plan. It must be documented. It's a requirement. And most couples, they often agree verbally. Okay, I'll take them weekends or whatever. It is better to put it on paper. Better to have your agreement on paper and have clarity on the choice of education. Might be a joint decision between the parties. Whatever, certain decisions. Unfortunately, many couples can't do this, and so they run to court. And then what happens there? You then get an appointment with a family advocate. And the family advocate must evaluate. And if it's only a nikah, then it gets referred to me for input. Where you could have started, going to the ulama, getting advice, what is best. So, to avoid this, my dear brothers and sisters, of course, I'm talking to a broad audience here. If someone knows of people going through this, and there are many, recommend that the couple gets a clear understanding, agreement of what's going to happen to the children. Right? This is very, very important because the Islamic upbringing must be prioritized. So, my dear brothers and sisters, as I close Kitab al-Talaq and I close our fiqh for the year as well, I close the chapter by highlighting that talaq matters must be reported to an Islamic authority, especially in today's time. Take the matter, and sometimes people are shy. They are shy to speak to the imams directly. Speak to someone elderly in your community, in your family, and then that person can, of course, contact us and say, okay, this is the scenario. Let us guide them, inshallah. And try to get your matter resolved by an Islamic judiciary or committee or, Fasq council. Alhamdulillah, at Masjid Taqwa, we write recommendations to the court as we interpret matters, and alhamdulillah, at least the matters are getting the Sharia input before being mandated by court. And then I close again by highlighting, because it is December, and sadly this is a peak divorce season. It is a peak divorce season because couples are more in each other's space and face, and the tension rises. And that's why the ulama are all on leave in December in the city because of this challenge. But nonetheless, I remind everyone, don't hasten for talaq. There will be ups and downs in every marriage. Every husband learns, every wife learns. It's the nature of the marriage. So don't hasten for talaq. Try to resolve it and take it to the ulama, inshallah. So we close. Are there any questions? Very good question. So with regards to the custody visiting rights, so let's say in the Sharia, both parents have a right to the child in terms of visitation. The concept of visitation is a one that is abused in society. And I've seen this in many couples. It's quite disgusting. Where the couple splits, and now the one says, okay, they say to their ex, if you buy the Eid clothing, then you can get an extra day with a child. This happens. Really, really, it's so common in our community. And of course, the couples who might bring it to me and they complain, but if they had taken the matter to the family advocate and that parenting plan is endorsed, it's legal. And then they want to only follow that and not fiqh. So in Islam, you should not, and I say this to every person who has gone through a divorce, do not prevent the mother or father of the child from having access to the child. You are going to account in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you are depriving the child of the parent. So if Islamically, both have rights to visitation. When we talk about habana in fiqh, we are talking about where the child's going to essentially stay or sleep. But in reality, a parent should have access to their child. It shouldn't be based on, a barter system of sort. Any more questions? Jazakallah khairan. May Allah bless us for all the fiqh. May Allah accept. May Allah permit us to act on what we've learned. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. The fiqh resumes in after the divorce season, inshallah. Resumes in January, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.